I walked into the kitchen and saw my dishes in the trash. It's a simple sentence, isn't it? But those 7 words don't even begin to capture the cold, sickening lurch in the pit of my stomach. My daughter-in-law Karen said to me, "Mom, they were old. I bought new stuff." I remember looking at her, really looking at her, and feeling a strange glacial calm settle over me. I replied, "Well, you're going to use them in your new house because you're not staying here anymore." It was time to remind her who pays the bills around here. I know what you're thinking. It sounds harsh, doesn't it? A 68-year-old woman kicking her son's pregnant wife out onto the street. The story, framed that way, makes me sound like a monster. But let me tell you what really happened that Tuesday morning when the dam of my patience, carefully constructed over 8 long months, didn't just crack, it exploded. It was 7 o'clock in the morning. I, Eleanor Thompson, a retired accountant and a widow for 7 years, had just woken up in my own house. Well, technically it was my house. For a while now, it hadn't felt like mine. I patted down the familiar wooden staircase, my fuzzy pink slippers making a soft, squeaking sound against the polished oak, a sound that usually brought me a small measure of comfort. I was already picturing my morning ritual, the one small island of peace I had left. I was thinking about making myself a cinnamon coffee, brewed strong and dark, the kind I like to sip while watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of rose and gold from my kitchen window. It was my little ritual, a quiet communion with the memory of my husband, Henry, and a moment to gather my strength before the daily chaos began. But when I pushed open the kitchen door, the air felt wrong. It was colder, sharper, something was different. The first thing I noticed was the trash can. It had been pulled out from its usual spot under the sink and was sitting in the middle of the floor, its lid wide open, overflowing. And peeking over the edge, I saw it. A flash of deep, brilliant cobalt blue that stopped my heart cold. It couldn't be. I approached slowly, my breath catching in my throat, each squeak of my slippers on the tile floor sounding like a gunshot in the sudden tense silence. And there it was, nestled amongst slimy eggshells, damp coffee grounds, and a used napkin stained with lipstick. My dish set, not just any dish set, my cobalt blue porcelain, each piece delicately rimmed with a fine line of gold. The set my Henry had given me on our wedding day, 45 years ago. He'd saved for months to buy it, telling me he wanted our new life together to start with something beautiful and lasting. This was the dish set we'd used to celebrate our son Ryan's first birthday. Serving a lopsided cake I'd baked myself on one of the large plates. This was the dish set we'd used to host my parents for their very last Christmas before they passed away, the sound of their laughter still echoing in my memory every time I held one of the cups. This was the dish set that had a tiny hairline chip on the edge of one of the dinner plates. A chip that happened when Henry, trying to be helpful, dropped it while washing up. The look of horror on his face was something I'd never forget. He swore he'd never break anything of mine ever again. I never fixed it, never replaced it. That little chip was part of our story, a testament to a small, forgivable moment of clumsiness in a lifetime of love. And now, that story, our story, was in the trash. With hands that trembled so badly I could barely control them, I reached into the filth and pulled out the chipped plate. My heart was pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. I could feel the frantic pulse in my temples, in my neck. How did it get here? Who would dare? "Oh, Mom, you're up already." Karen's voice, crisp and melodic, sliced through my shock like a shard of ice. I turned around, my movements stiff, robotic. There she was, my daughter-in-law, standing by the counter in her perfectly pressed pink satin pajamas. Her long, dark hair brushed into a flawless, shimmering cascade, even though it was barely past 7 in the morning. Always impeccable, always in control. "Karen?" My voice came out as a weak, reedy whisper, a sound I barely recognized as my own. Why are my dishes in the trash?" She didn't even blink. She glided over to the new, stainless steel refrigerator she'd insisted we needed and poured herself a glass of water from the fancy filter she'd had installed without even asking me. She took a slow, deliberate sip, then looked at me with that smile I had come to know all too well. It was a perfect smile, all white teeth and upturned lips. But it never ever reached her cold, calculating eyes. "Oh, that?" she said, her tone dismissive, as if I were asking about a discarded newspaper. "Yeah, Mom, it's because they were really old." I mean, look, she gestured vaguely towards the plate in my hand. They were even chipped. Yesterday, I went to the mall and I just couldn't resist. I bought a brand new set, much more modern, you'll see. She pointed a perfectly manicured finger towards the glass-fronted cupboard. There, where my blue plates had lived for over 4 decades, sat a stack of stark, minimalist white dishes. They were cold, impersonal, utterly devoid of history or soul. They looked like they belonged in a sterile showroom, not a home. But Karen, I stammered, feeling the ground shift beneath my feet. Those dishes, they were from my wedding. You had no right to— Oh, Mom, don't get so sentimental, she interrupted, rolling her eyes. They were just old plates. Besides, this whole house needed an update. Ryan agrees with me, you know. We're in 2025 now. We can't live surrounded by antiques. Antiques. She called 45 years of my life, of my marriage, of my memories, antiques. In that moment, I felt something inside me snap. But it wasn't my heart, not this time. It was something deeper, something far more resilient. It was the very last thread of patience I had left. Because those beautiful blue dishes, lying broken and defiled in a bin full of garbage, weren't just shattered porcelain. They were the perfect, heartbreaking symbol of everything that had happened in the 8 months since Karen and my son Ryan had moved temporarily into my home. If you want to know how a 68-year-old retired accountant, the proud owner of her own mortgage-free home, ended up feeling like a trespasser in her own life, then stay with me. Because this story is just beginning, and what I discovered after I rescued those dishes from the trash was so much worse, so much more calculated than I could have ever imagined. But before I continue, if stories like this resonate with you, if they touch your heart, please consider subscribing to Elderly Stories. Here, we share the real-life accounts of women who discovered their own strength right when everything seemed to be lost. Now let me take you back. Let me tell you how we got to that cursed Tuesday. Because to truly understand why a set of old, chipped dishes became the straw that broke the camel's back, you need to know what came before. You need to know the mistake I made, the mistake of trusting too much, of loving too blindly. And it all started 8 months ago, with a single phone call that would change my life forever. 8 months before I found my life's memories in a trash can. I received a call that shattered the quiet peace of my afternoon. It was Ryan, my only son, my boy. Well, not such a boy anymore. 32 years old. A successful civil engineer. Married to Karen for 3 years. He had always been the responsible one, hardworking, grounded. Or so I had thought. Mom, I need to talk to you. His voice on the other end of the line was ragged, broken. It was the voice of a man who had been hollowed out by despair. I knew instantly, with that gut-wrenching certainty that only a mother can have, that something was terribly wrong. Tell me, son. What happened? I asked, my own voice tight with apprehension as I sank onto the edge of my armchair. I got laid off, he confessed, the words tumbling out in a rush. The construction company, it went bankrupt. They left us all on the street, Mom. No severance, no warning, nothing. And Karen is 6 months pregnant. My blood ran cold. My son, my brilliant, capable son, without a job. A grandchild on the way. What mother wouldn't move heaven and earth? What do you need? I asked, my heart aching for him, my mind already racing through possibilities. There was no hesitation in my voice. There was a long, heavy silence on the line. Too long. Then he finally spoke again, his voice thick with shame. Mom, I know this is a lot to ask, but could we stay with you for a few months? Just until I can find another job. We're behind on the rent. They're going to evict us from the apartment. Karen, she can't work because of the high-risk pregnancy. Come, I said, cutting him off before he could say another word. This is your home. It always has been. I heard his sigh of relief, a sound so profound it was almost a sob. Then I heard Karen's voice in the background, high-pitched and undeniably excited. She said yes. Oh, thank you, Mom. Thank you. I hung up the phone with my heart feeling both heavy and full. Heavy with worry for them, but full of purpose. Of course I would help them. Ryan was my blood, my only child, and that baby on the way would be my very first grandchild. My family needed me. I spent that entire week in a whirlwind of preparation. I aired out the guest room, changing the sheets for my best linen set, fluffing the pillows, and setting out fresh, clean towels. I went out and bought diapers and tiny baby clothes, my heart swelling with joy as I folded the impossibly small onesies. I even took it upon myself to paint one wall of the room with a whimsical mural of fluffy white clouds and twinkling silver stars, imagining my future granddaughter sleeping peacefully beneath it. They arrived on a Sunday afternoon, their car stuffed to the brim, though they only brought 2 large suitcases into the house, along with a mountain of promises. "It'll only be for a couple of months, Mom, Max." "You'll see. I'll find something new in no time," Ryan assured me, his face etched with a mixture of gratitude and exhaustion as he carried boxes up the stairs. Karen enveloped me in a hug that felt a little too theatrical. She smelled of an expensive, cloying perfume, a scent far too luxurious for someone supposedly on the brink of financial ruin. "Oh, Mom, you have no idea how much we appreciate this. I promise we won't be a bother at all." How naive I was. How utterly, tragically naive I was to believe her. The first few days were almost normal. Ryan would leave early every morning, his briefcase filled with resumes, his face set with determination. Karen, citing her delicate condition, would rest. I found myself humming as I cooked for the 3 of us, genuinely happy to have the house full again. Since Henry had passed 7 years ago, the silence had often been my only companion, a constant, heavy presence. But the signs started soon. They were small at first, like tiny cracks in a foundation. First it was the curtains. One Tuesday, I returned from my weekly grocery shopping trip to find that the warm, beige linen curtains in the living room were gone. In their place hung heavy, oppressive drapes of a dark charcoal gray that sucked all the light out of the room and made it feel like a funeral parlor. "Oh, Mom." "I hope you don't mind," Karen chirped when she saw me standing there in stunned silence. "It's just that the others were so faded. I got these on a fantastic sale." She said it as if she had done me a favor, as if her bargain hunting trumped my 40 years of taste. Then it was the sofa. She moved it, without so much as a word to me, from its long-held position against the main wall to beneath the window. "This way the light comes in better for my reading," she explained. The couch where Henry and I had watched television every single night for 35 years. The couch where I had rocked a feverish Ryan to sleep when he was just a baby. Now it was positioned for her convenience. Then it was the music. Karen started blasting saccharine pop music at full volume from a portable speaker she carried from room to room. When I politely asked her to turn it down so I could read my book in peace, she sighed dramatically, as if I were some bitter, joyless old woman. "It's because the baby needs stimulation, Mom. I read it in a book." And I stayed quiet. Through all of it, I bit my tongue and I stayed quiet. Because my son was hurting. Because they needed my support. Because they were my family. Because a mother does not abandon her child in the middle of a storm. But the storm was only just beginning to gather, and I had no idea that the one who was about to end up drowning was me. 2 months turned into 3, and 3 bled into 4. And slowly, insidiously, my house stopped being mine. Nobody warns you about the moment you cease to be the owner of your own home. There isn't a formal handover. No deed is signed. It happens gradually, like sand slipping through your fingers. One day you are in control, the mistress of your domain, and the next you wake up to find you are merely a visitor, an inconvenient guest in the life you built for yourself. That's precisely what happened to me. By the 4th month, Karen had stopped asking for permission for anything. She just did it. One Saturday morning, I returned from the local farmer's market, my canvas bags brimming with fresh vegetables and fruits, and I nearly fell over in shock right there in the entryway. All of my living room furniture was piled haphazardly in the hallway. My beautiful mahogany bookshelf, filled with classics and memories. The small table that held our wedding photos. The antique sideboard I had inherited from my grandmother, all of it was stacked like firewood. "What is going on here?" I asked, my heart beginning to race with a dreadful premonition. Karen appeared from the now empty living room, a tape measure clutched in her hand, a triumphant look on her face. "Oh, Mom. Good, you're here. Look, I hired a guy to help me take all this old furniture down to the basement. It's because with the baby coming, we're going to need a lot more space. I'm thinking of putting a large playpen right here and a rocking chair over there. Doesn't that seem just perfect?" She wasn't asking me. She was informing me. "But Karen, this furniture, it has sentimental value. They can't go down to the basement. They'll be ruined by the humidity down there. My voice was pleading. She looked at me with an expression I was beginning to despise, that infuriating mix of pity and impatience. Mom, you have to understand. We're not in the 1980s anymore. This furniture is so incredibly outdated. Besides, what's the point of keeping nice things if they're just going to be stored away? The baby needs space. And with that, she waved to the burly young man who was waiting just outside the door. Between the two of them, they began hauling my memories down the rickety stairs to the damp, musty basement, while I stood there, utterly powerless, the bag of groceries still clutched in my hands. That night, I cried myself to sleep in my room. But I didn't say a word to Ryan. He was working late most nights, still desperately searching for a permanent job. Karen was pregnant, and the last thing I wanted was to cause her any stress. I was the mom, the mother-in-law, the matriarch. I was the one who had to endure everything for the sake of the family. By the 5th month, Karen's mother, Mrs. Edith, arrived without any warning. I was in the kitchen preparing lunch when I heard the front door open, followed by the sound of women's voices and peals of laughter. I walked into the living room, and there she was, a formidable woman with enormous sunglasses perched on her nose and a large travel suitcase at her feet. "Oh, Mom!" Karen shouted excitedly. "Look! Let me introduce you to my mom, Mrs. Edith. She's going to stay for a few days to help me with the final stages of the pregnancy." Mrs. Edith extended a limp, bringed hand in my direction without bothering to take off her sunglasses. "A pleasure to meet you," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Karen has told me so much about you." Probably nothing good, I thought grimly. Of course. "Welcome," I said, forcing a smile that felt brittle enough to shatter. Her few days turned into 2 long, grueling weeks. Mrs. Edith immediately took possession of the television remote, openly criticized my cooking, a little bland for my taste, dear, left her belongings scattered all over the house. And worst of all, she spent her time filling Karen's head with poisonous ideas. "Honey, why don't you just ask your mother-in-law for the big bedroom? Your current room is far too small for the baby." "Mom," I already told her, but she says that was her master bedroom with Henry. "Oh, but your mother-in-law is all alone now. What on earth does she need all that space for? Besides, when you lend your house, you're supposed to do it completely, right? No holding back." I heard every word from the kitchen. My hands sunk in a basin of soapy water as I washed the dishes they had left dirty in the sink. I took a deep, shuddering breath. "Don't say anything, Eleanor. Don't cause any problems." But the problems were already here. They were living in my living room, sleeping in my guest room, breathing my air. And when Mrs. Edith finally departed, she left something far worse behind than her forgotten suitcase. She left Karen utterly convinced that my home should be completely and unconditionally hers. By the 6th month, Ryan finally found a job. It was only part-time and the pay was low, but it was something. I allowed myself a small glimmer of hope that they would be leaving soon. But when I broached the subject one night at dinner, they both looked distinctly uncomfortable. "Mom, it's just that—" "It still doesn't cover the cost of a decent rent," Ryan said, avoiding my gaze. "And with the baby coming any day now, we really need to save up," Karen added quickly, placing a protective hand on her swollen belly. "Right, Mom? You understand, don't you?" Of course I understood. I understood perfectly that they were using me. But my mouth, betraying my heart, said, "Yes, of course. Stay as long as you need." That night I couldn't sleep. A frantic voice inside me was screaming that I had lost control, that I had crossed some invisible line from which there was no return. But even then, even with all the red flags waving in my face, I still couldn't have imagined just how far they were willing to go. Chloe was born on a Tuesday, just before dawn. I remember every single detail of that night with crystal clarity. Karen's sharp scream from her room, Ryan running frantically for the car keys, me, with my heart in my throat, helping her down the stairs, her weight heavy on my arm. At the hospital, I waited for 8 excruciating hours in that cold, sterile room that smelled of disinfectant and reheated coffee. And when they finally let me in, when I saw that tiny, perfect creature wrapped in a pink blanket, with her impossibly small hands and her eyes squeezed shut, the world simply stopped. My granddaughter. The first time I held her, I felt that everything had been worth it. All the inconveniences, all the sacrifices, all the space I had surrendered. Nothing else mattered compared to that warm, precious weight in my arms. "She's perfect," I whispered, tears of pure joy streaming down my cheeks. Karen looked at me from her hospital bed with a strange, triumphant smile, as if she had just won some great victory. And in a way she had, because from that moment on, Chloe became the most powerful weapon Karen had in her arsenal against me. We arrived home 3 days later. I had prepared everything meticulously. Diapers were stacked, clothes were washed, bottles were sterilized. I had even bought a beautiful wooden crib that I had lovingly assembled myself in their room. But on the second day, Karen came into the kitchen while I was making breakfast. "Mom, we need to talk." I turned. She was holding Chloe in her arms, using my granddaughter as a shield. "Tell me, it's about my room. It's just too small for the 3 of us. The baby cries at night, and we don't have enough space for all of her things. I need you to give me the big room." "The big room? My room?" "The room that I had shared with Henry for 35 years of our marriage. Karen, that room, it has so many memories for me. It's where—" "Mom, think about your granddaughter," she interrupted, her voice firm, unyielding. "Are you really going to deny her a comfortable space just for the sake of your memories? You're all alone. I have to care for a newborn. What's more important?" I was speechless. How do you argue against that? How do you say no when they frame it as a choice between your own comfort and the well-being of your grandchild? "Give me a few days to think about it," I said, my voice cracking. "Okay. But while you're thinking, the baby is suffering in that tiny little room." I barely slept at all last night. 5 days later, I was sleeping in the small guest room, and Karen had transformed my master bedroom into a state-of-the-art baby suite, complete with a crib, a changing table, a rocking chair, and even a mini fridge for bottles. She didn't ask for my help to move my things. I simply came back from the bank one afternoon and it was done, but that was just the beginning. "Mom, why do you cook with so much garlic and onion?" "It could hurt the baby through my milk." "Mom, please don't wear that perfume. The chemicals are bad for newborns." "Mom, can you turn down the TV? The baby needs absolute quiet to sleep." "Mom, my mother says that babies need a constant temperature. Can you please leave the air conditioning on all day? I know you pay the electric bill, but it's for Chloe, right?" Every single request, every demand came wrapped in the name of my granddaughter, and I accepted it all. Because every time I saw that perfect little face, every time Chloe wrapped her tiny hand around my finger or gave me a gummy, toothless smile, my heart melted. Karen knew it, and she used it, mercilessly. By the 7th month, I was forced to give up my sewing room, that precious space where I spent my afternoons mending clothes, where I had my old Singer machine, my fabrics, my patterns, my one remaining sanctuary of peace. "It's because we need a playroom for when Chloe gets a little older," Karen announced one Sunday while we were having coffee. "She'll be 2 months old soon, and she'll need a place for early stimulation." "Your sewing can wait, right, Mom?" I packed up my machines and my boxes of thread, put my precious fabrics into plastic bags, and carried it all down to the damp basement where my grandmother's furniture was already gathering mildew. That night, I sat on the edge of my new, smaller bed in the room that used to be for guests, and I looked at myself in the mirror. I saw a 68-year-old woman with hair that was much whiter than it had been 8 months ago, with deep, dark circles under her eyes, living like a stranger in the very house she had built with 40 years of hard work. How had I let it come to this? Ryan worked so much that I barely saw him. On the rare occasions I tried to mention something about Karen, he would just sigh and say, "Mom, she just wants what's best for Chloe. You want what's best for her too, right?" And I would nod, because yes, of course I wanted what was best for my granddaughter. But no one, not once, ever asked what was best for me. And then came that cursed Tuesday, the day of the dishes in the trash. The day something inside of me finally, irrevocably said, enough. There I was, standing in my own kitchen, in front of my own trash can, with that precious cobalt blue plate shaking uncontrollably in my hands. 45 years of my marriage, of my life, had been reduced to garbage. Karen was still there, calmly sipping her filtered water as if nothing had happened, as if she had just thrown away an old newspaper and not the tangible memories of my entire adult life. "You know what, Mom? You should honestly be thanking me," she said, her voice laced with an infuriating cheerfulness. "Those old dishes made the kitchen look so outdated. Now everything looks so much cleaner, more modern. I even took some photos for my Instagram. Here, look," she held out her phone to me. And there they were. A series of professionally filtered photos of my newly updated kitchen, featuring her sterile white plates with a caption that read, "Refreshing our spaces. Sometimes you have to let go of the old to welcome the new. Home makeover. Shop modern living." There were 52 comments, all of them telling her how beautiful it looked, how she had such wonderful taste. No one knew that the old she had so casually let go of were my memories. No one knew that each and every plate in that set had a story. "These dishes," I said, my voice trembling with a rage I hadn't felt in years. "My husband Henry gave them to me on our wedding day. We ate our very first breakfast as a married couple on these plates. We celebrated Ryan's first birthday with these dishes. The last Christmas I ever had with my parents was served right here." Karen rolled her eyes in a flagrant display of impatience. "Oh, Mom, honestly, they're just plates. You can't live in the past. Henry died 7 years ago. Your parents are gone too. Ryan is a grown man. Life moves on. And this house desperately needed an update. Just plates. Henry died, as if love could be erased by death, as if memories were worthless trinkets to be discarded." I reached back into the trash and pulled out another plate. It had coffee stains caked onto it. They had used it that very morning and then simply thrown it away as if it were a disposable paper plate. "See this chip?" I said, pointing to the tiny imperfection on the golden rim. "Your husband, my son Ryan, was 3 years old. Henry was washing the dishes after dinner, right here in this very sink. This plate slipped out of his hands. He was so upset he almost cried. He said, 'Love, I'm so sorry. I broke your wedding plate.' And I told him that it didn't matter, that accidents happen. I never fixed it, because that chip always reminded me that nothing and no one has to be perfect to be valuable." Karen sighed with an air of profound exasperation. "Mom, are we really going to make a whole drama out of one chipped plate? Look, if it means that much to you, then just keep that one. I already threw the rest of them away. The garbage truck comes in about an hour. I had 1 hour to rescue 45 years of my life before they ended up in the city dump, buried under mountains of other people's refuse." Without another word, I knelt down on the cold tile floor in front of the bin. I began to pull out the plates, one by one. 8 dinner plates, 6 soup bowls, 4 teacups and their saucers, the large soup tureen, the small creamer. All of them were stained with trash, covered in eggshells and soggy food scraps. Karen watched me from above, her arms crossed over her chest in a posture of pure judgment. "Oh, Mom, are you seriously pulling that stuff out of there? It's all filthy." Yes, I was pulling it out piece by precious piece. Because these dishes were not trash. These dishes were me. They were my history. They were the tangible proof that I had existed, that I had loved, that I had built a family. And someone had just thrown them away as if they were completely and utterly worthless. I finished pulling everything out. My hands were shaking, my heart was pounding so hard I could feel the pulse in my ears. I stood up slowly, very slowly, because something inside me was shifting. Something that had been dormant for 8 long months was finally, powerfully, waking up. I looked Karen straight in the eyes, my gaze unflinching. "These dishes are worth more than all of your new soulless stuff combined. Because these dishes have a soul. They have history. They have love. Do you know what your pristine white plates have? Nothing. They are just as empty as you are." Karen's eyes widened in genuine surprise. She had never heard me speak to her like that. "Excuse me?" "No," I said, my voice low and steady. "I don't excuse you. Not anymore." I carried my precious, defiled dishes to the sink and began to wash them, piece by piece, with the utmost care, with a reverence they deserved. Karen just stood there for once, not knowing what to say. For the first time in 8 long months, she was not in control of the situation. And as I washed those dishes, as I lovingly removed the filth she had so carelessly smeared all over them, I made a decision. This had just become a war, and I had absolutely no intention of losing. That night I couldn't sleep a wink. I sat on the edge of the bed in the small, cramped room, my room now, with the lights off, just looking out the window at how the pale moonlight illuminated the garden that Henry and I had planted together so many years ago. The clean dishes rested safely in a cardboard box beside me. I had dried each piece with the same tender care one would use to handle a newborn baby. Each plate, each cup, represented something Karen had tried to erase from my life. But I wasn't a fool. The dishes weren't the real problem. The problem was that I had become a stranger in my own home. And worst of all, I had allowed it to happen. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I switched on the small lamp on my nightstand. I pulled out a green accordion folder from the bottom drawer of my dresser, the one where I kept all of my important documents. I needed to see things clearly, with cold, hard numbers, with indisputable facts. I was an accountant, after all. Numbers didn't lie. I laid out the deed to the house. It was in my name, and my name alone. I had paid for this house with 40 years of dedicated work at a mid-sized accounting firm. Every single dollar that had gone into this property came from my effort, my late nights, my sacrifices. I opened my most recent bank statement. I started adding up the household expenses from the last 8 months. Electricity, $189 a month on average. Times 8 months, that came to $1,512. The consumption had nearly tripled since they arrived. The air conditioning ran all day for Chloe. Lights were left on in every room because Karen was afraid of the dark. Water, $64 a month. $512 total. Karen took 2 long showers a day. The washing machine ran daily with small loads because she didn't like to mix the baby's clothes with anything else. Gas, $120 a month. $960 accumulated. Karen cooked at all hours and often left the stove on so that the water for the baby's bottles was always ready. Internet, $59 a month. $472. She used it to stream her shows while Chloe slept and to post filtered photos of my remodeled house on Instagram. And then there were the groceries. I had paid for everything, an average of $350 a week to feed 4 people. That came to an astronomical $11,200 in just 8 months. Karen always asked for expensive organic brands, special products for the baby, things I had never bought when I was living alone. I added it all up. I stared at the final number, my breath catching in my throat. $14,656. In 8 months, I had spent almost $15,000 to support 3 people who treated me like a live-in maid in my own home. And what had Ryan contributed? $150 every 2 weeks when he could. $300 a month. $2,400 in 8 months at most. And Karen? Zero, absolutely nothing. Not a single dollar. Not even an ounce of genuine gratitude. I continued to rifle through the papers. I found the receipt for the new modern dishes. $185. Purchased at Macy's with home delivery. But wait, I looked closer. The payment method was listed as a Visa card ending in 4829. I didn't have any credit cards that ended in 4829. Or did I? I checked my full credit card statements online, and there it was. A charge for $185 at Macy's made 3 weeks ago. On my credit card, the one I kept for emergencies in the top drawer of my desk in the big room. The room that was now Karen's. The air left my lungs in a painful whoosh. Karen had used my credit card without my permission. She had gone into my private desk, taken my card, and bought new dishes to replace mine. With my own money. This wasn't just disrespect anymore. This was theft. I got up from the bed, my body shaking, not from fear, but from a cold, white-hot rage. I paced the small room, trying to process what I had just discovered. How many other times had she used my card? What else had she bought with my money? I scrolled through all the transactions from the past few months. And there they were. Charges I didn't recognize. Clothes from Zara, makeup from Sephora, decorative items from Home Depot, shoes from Amazon. It all added up to another $3,400. Karen had been systematically stealing from me for months, and I hadn't even noticed. Because I trusted them. Because they were family. Because you don't keep watch over your own blood. I sat down on the floor, all the papers scattered around me like fallen leaves. The tears finally started to fall, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of terrible, searing clarity. I finally saw the truth. Ryan and Karen weren't just here temporarily. They weren't saving up to leave. They were using me as a free hotel, a personal bank, while they spent my money on luxuries. And when there was nothing left for them to take from me, they would leave me alone again. But this time, I would be without a house, without my savings, and without my dignity. That was not going to happen. I looked at the clock. 4:30 in the morning. In 3.5 hours, the bank would open. And I had some calls to make, because if 40 years of working with numbers had taught me anything, it's this. You always have the evidence to back you up before you make your move. And I now had all the evidence I would ever need. But before I made any legal moves, I needed to be absolutely sure of one last thing. I needed to know if Ryan and Karen truly saw me as family, or just as a resource to be exploited. I needed one final test to remove any lingering doubt, any shred of guilt. Because suspecting is one thing, knowing for sure is another entirely. So, 2 days after discovering the fraudulent charges on my credit card, I decided to conduct an experiment. A painful one, but a necessary one. It was a Thursday morning. Ryan had already left for his part-time job. Karen was in the living room, scrolling through videos on her phone while Chloe slept soundly in the playpen. I approached the doorway slowly, placing a trembling hand on my chest. I deliberately made my breathing a little ragged. I leaned heavily against the doorframe for support. "Karen," I said, my voice weak and strained. She didn't even look up from her phone. "What is it, Mom?" I feel bad. My chest hurts a lot. I can't seem to breathe properly." Now she looked up, but her expression was one of annoyance, not concern. "Oh, Mom, here we go again with your aches and pains. It's probably just heartburn. Go have some chamomile tea." "No, Karen, this is different. The pain, it's going down my left arm. My father died of a heart attack, and I'm scared." I let myself slump onto the sofa, really playing up the pain, because I needed to see just how far her indifference would go. Karen sighed dramatically. She got up from the sofa with a lazy, grudging movement. "And what do you want me to do about it? I can't take you to the doctor. I have to watch Chloe. Please, can you just call Ryan? Or take me and bring the baby with us. I really feel awful." Karen checked the time on her phone. She made a face of pure irritation. "Oh no, Mom, today is Thursday. I have plans to meet my friends at noon for lunch. I haven't been out in 2 weeks. You can't ask me to cancel?" I stared at her, waiting for the punchline, waiting for her to say, "Just kidding. Of course I'll take you." But she didn't. "Karen, I am telling you, my chest hurts. It could be a heart attack." "Oh, Mom, don't be so dramatic. If it was a real heart attack, you'd be on the floor by now. Besides, you've always been healthy. It's probably just stress or something you ate. Just rest for a bit, and if it doesn't go away, call yourself a cab. I really can't cancel. My friends are already on their way." She turned and went upstairs to get ready. I just sat there, my hand still pressed to my chest, processing what had just happened. It wasn't acting anymore. The pain in my chest was real now, but it wasn't coming from my physical heart. It was coming from the devastating realization that for Karen, a lunch date with her friends was more important than my life. I waited for 5 more minutes. Karen came down the stairs, perfectly made up, carrying a designer handbag that I had never known how she could afford. Now, of course, I knew. She had paid for it with my card. "Mom, you're still there? I told you to have some tea. And please, keep an eye on Chloe for me. I'll be back around 5, and then she left. She left me alone, supposedly in the throes of a medical emergency, to go and eat with her friends. I stayed still for a long moment. Then, I pulled out my own phone and called the only person I knew would come without hesitation. "Mrs. Thompson," answered Mrs. Rebecca, my neighbor and friend for over 30 years. "Rebecca, can you please take me to Dr. Newman's office?" "I'm not feeling well. I'm coming right now." 3 minutes later, she was knocking on my door. She helped me into her car and drove me to the neighborhood doctor's office. Dr. Newman, who had been my physician for 20 years, checked me over carefully. "High blood pressure, a rapid heart rate, severe chest tension. Eleanor," he said, his face grave. "This is not a heart attack, but it is a very serious warning. This is chronic stress, acute anxiety. Your body is crying out for help. What on earth is going on in your life?" And there, in that small office that smelled of rubbing alcohol and cotton balls, with Mrs. Rebecca holding my hand tightly, it all came out. I told him everything. About Karen, about the invasion of my house, about the dishes in the trash, about the stolen money, and about that very morning, when she had left me alone thinking I might be dying. "Eleanor," the doctor said firmly, "if you don't do something about this, and soon, the next chest pain will be real. Your body cannot take much more of this." Mrs. Rebecca squeezed my hand. "Friend," she said, her voice filled with a fierce loyalty, "it's time. That girl is killing you little by little, and you are letting her. They were right. Both of them were right." The test was over, and the result was devastating. For Karen, I wasn't family. I was a resource, a free hotel, an open wallet. And Ryan, my own son, didn't even know what was happening because he was never there. And when he was, he chose not to see. I left that doctor's office with a prescription for blood pressure medication and an absolute, unshakable certainty in my heart. It was over. That very night, I would begin to set my plan in motion. Because this was no longer just about money or dishes. This was about my life, and I had no intention of dying as a stranger in my own home. I arrived home after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Karen, predictably, was still not back from her lunch with friends. I went straight to the small guest room and locked the door behind me. I pulled out one of my old notebooks, one of those sturdy, hardcover ledgers I used to use for my accounting work, and I began to write out a plan, step by meticulous step. But first, I needed professional help. Someone who knew the laws inside and out. Someone I could trust completely. I dialed a number I had kept saved in my phone for years. "Aunt Eleanor?" A young, surprised voice answered. "Valerie, my girl, I need your help." Valerie was my niece, the daughter of my younger sister who had passed away 10 years ago. I had helped pay for part of her law school tuition. Now, she was a brilliant young lawyer at a firm that specialized in family and civil law. "Of course, Auntie. What's happened? You sound worried. Can you come over tomorrow morning? I need some legal advice, and please, keep this just between us." There was a brief pause on the line. Valerie was smart. She knew immediately that something serious was happening. "Tomorrow at 10 o'clock. I'll be there. Are you okay?" "I will be," I said. "And Valerie, thank you." That night, when Karen finally waltzed in at 8 o'clock, not 5, as she had promised, smelling of wine and carrying several shopping bags, I already had half of my plan finalized. The next day, Friday, Ryan left early as usual. Karen announced that she was taking Chloe to her mother's house for a few hours. The timing was perfect. Valerie arrived precisely on time. I saw her from the window, getting out of her car with a professional leather briefcase. She was tall, her hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, wearing a sharp navy blue suit. She was the daughter my sister would have been so proud to see. I opened the door before she even had a chance to knock. "Come in quickly." We sat at the kitchen table. I served her coffee, and then I laid everything out. The bank statements, the credit card receipts, the deed to the house, photos of the unauthorized charges on my phone. Valerie reviewed it all with the sharp, focused eyes of a lawyer, her expression hardening with each document she examined. "Auntie," she said finally, her voice grim, "this is fraud. Unauthorized use of a credit card. You could file a criminal complaint against Karen right now." "I don't want to put her in jail," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I just want them out of my house, and I want my money back." "I understand. Then this is what we're going to do." Valerie pulled out her laptop and began to type, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "First, we are going to draft a formal eviction notice. You have every legal right to do this. This is your house, in your name. They don't pay rent and they do not have a lease. We will give them 30 days to vacate the premises. And if they refuse, then we proceed with the judicial eviction. But with this document, you have the full backing of the law." She continued typing, the sound of the keyboard filling the kitchen like a war drum. "Second, you need to block all of your credit cards today. Call the bank and report the unauthorized charges." "Won't that get Karen into trouble?" "Auntie, she is already in trouble. She committed a crime. You are being incredibly kind by not reporting her directly to the police." We spent the next 3 hours going over everything. Valerie drafted an impeccable document, formal yet crystal clear. When she was finished, she showed it to me. It was an official eviction notice specifying that Ryan Thompson and Karen Miller had 30 days to vacate the property located at 847 Maple Avenue in the suburb of Pleasant Valley. Attached was a copy of the deed and a detailed breakdown of all the expenses. This has legal weight, Auntie. If you sign this and deliver it with witnesses present, they cannot claim later that they were not properly informed. Witnesses? Yes, I can be one, and we'll need another person. Mrs. Rebecca, I said without hesitation. My neighbor would not hesitate to help me. One more thing, Auntie, Valerie said, looking at me seriously. Are you truly ready for this? Because Ryan is your son. It's going to hurt when you see him angry. He's going to say ugly things. He's going to try to make you feel guilty. I stayed quiet for a long moment. I thought of Ryan as a baby, as a teenager, of all the times I had supported him, hugged him, defended him. But I also thought of the Ryan of now, the man who was never there, who chose not to see, who left me at the mercy of his manipulative wife. I'm ready, I said firmly. I'm not just his mother anymore. I am also Eleanor, and Eleanor deserves to be respected. Valerie smiled. She squeezed my hand. There's the aunt I know, the one who doesn't let anyone walk all over her. We printed 3 copies of the document. I signed each one with a hand that was shaky, but determined. Valerie hugged me before she left. When you're ready to deliver it, just call me. I'll come right over. I watched her drive away. I went up to my room and locked the document safely in my bureau. The plan was ready. Now, all I needed was the right moment. But first, I needed to know one last thing. I needed to confirm my suspicions about Ryan and Karen's true intentions. And what I discovered that very same afternoon chilled me to the bone. That same afternoon, while I was putting the documents away, I heard voices coming from the garden. I peeked out the window of the small guest room. Ryan had come home from work early. He was standing with Karen by the old stone fountain that Henry had installed years ago. They were speaking in low tones, but the wind carried snippets of their conversation up to my window. Just 6 more months, and we'll have enough for the down payment, Karen was saying. Are you sure? Your mom has been acting really weird lately, Ryan replied, his voice laced with anxiety. Your mom is all drama, Karen scoffed. As long as she has Chloe nearby, she won't do anything drastic. We have her eating out of the palm of our hand. I felt the floor open up beneath my feet. Maybe we should start looking for a place of our own soon. I don't want to abuse her hospitality. Ryan's voice sounded guilty. Oh, Ryan, don't be so naive, Karen said. Your mom lives all alone in this huge house. We're practically doing her a favor by giving her some company. Besides, why should we pay rent when we can save all that money here? In 6 more months, we'll have saved the $20,000 we need for the down payment on our own place. And then we can go. It's easy, $20,000. They were planning to stay for 6 more months to save $20,000 while I paid for everything. And what if she gets mad? Ryan asked. She won't get mad. She's your mom. That's what mothers do. They put up with everything for their kids. Besides, Karen added with a little laugh, I've already taken about $5,000 from her credit card, and she hasn't even noticed. Ryan said nothing. He didn't scold her. He didn't get indignant. He just remained silent. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. My son knew. Maybe he didn't know all the details, but he knew that Karen was using me, and he was allowing it to happen. I closed the window with shaking hands. Not from fear this time, but from a towering, righteous fury. It was over. I went down the stairs. I walked out into the garden where they were still talking. I need both of you in the living room, now. My voice came out so cold, so devoid of warmth, that they both turned around in surprise. Mom, what's wrong? Ryan asked. To the living room, now. We went inside. I remained standing. They sat down on the sofa, Karen with Chloe in her arms. I pulled out the documents I had printed with Valerie. I placed them firmly on the coffee table. What is this? Karen asked, picking one up. Read it. I watched as their eyes scanned the lines, as their expressions went from confusion to utter shock. Ryan read over her shoulder. Mom, an eviction notice? His voice broke. You have 30 days to find another place to live. But why? Karen stood up, her face a mask of indignation. What did we do? I looked at her steadily without blinking. Are you really going to ask me what you did? Really, Mom? If this is about the dishes, I already said I was sorry. It's not just about the dishes, Karen. It's about everything. It's about the 8 months you have treated my home like a free hotel, for changing everything without my permission, for kicking me out of my own bedroom, for dismantling my sewing room. And for using my credit card without authorization. Karen turned pale. I did not. $3,400, I said, pulling another document from the folder. That's how much you spent on my card without my permission. Here are all the charges: Zara, Sephora, Macy's, Home Depot. Need I go on? Mom, there must be some kind of misunderstanding, Ryan interrupted. There is no misunderstanding. Ryan, I heard the two of you a little while ago in the garden, talking about staying for 6 more months to save $20,000. Using my house as your personal piggy bank. Ryan went completely silent. Karen started to cry. Mom, I'm so sorry. I just wanted Chloe to have a better life. At my expense? By stealing from me? By using my granddaughter as a shield whenever it suited you? It's not stealing. We're family, Karen yelled. Family respects each other, Karen. Family shows gratitude. Family does not throw 45 years of precious memories into the trash like common garbage. Mom, please, Ryan stood up. You're my mother. You owe us your support. We were going through a tough time. Those words were the final straw. I owe you support? My voice rose. I gave you life. I paid for your school, your college. I gave you a roof over your head for 30 years. I opened my doors to you when you needed it most. And you know what? I don't owe you anything else. I paid my debt as a mother years ago. But we're your family. You can't just kick us out, Karen cried. I can and I am. This house is mine. I paid for it. I decide who lives here. And you two don't live here anymore. Ryan fell back onto the sofa. For the first time, he really looked at me, as if after 8 long months, he was finally waking up from a long sleep. Mom, his voice was just a whisper. I'm so sorry. I felt the tears wanting to come out, but I held them back. I'm sorry it has come to this. But you left me no other choice. Karen continued to cry, holding Chloe in her arms. The baby, sensing the tension, started to fuss. 30 days, I repeated. If in that time you have not found another place to live, I will proceed legally with the eviction. And believe me, you do not want it to come to that. I turned and left the living room before they could see my tears fall. But something else was about to explode, something I didn't even see coming. I hadn't made it halfway up the stairs when I heard Karen scream. This is all your fault, Ryan. I told you your mom was a bitter old lady. That's probably why your dad died, from the sheer misery of having to live with her. I stopped dead in my tracks. Those words pierced me like bullets. I turned around slowly, very slowly. I went down each step with a calm I did not feel, because inside I was boiling. What did you just say? I asked, my voice dangerously low. Karen realized her mistake. She tried to backtrack. Mom, I didn't mean... Repeat it, I said, taking a step towards her. Tell me again why my husband died. Mom, just let it go. Karen is just nervous, Ryan tried to intervene. No. My shout made them both jump. I want to hear it from her own mouth. You think Henry died from misery living with me? Karen swallowed hard, but I had underestimated her. When she felt cornered, she attacked. Well, just look at this house. It's old, it's outdated, it's full of junk. Your whole house is ugly, in every way. That's why I had to try and update it. Something inside me broke, but it wasn't from pain. It was from absolute blinding clarity. I walked over to my desk in the dining room. I pulled out a folder I had prepared that morning, right after I had spoken to Valerie. I had kept it there, waiting for the right moment. And this was the moment. You want to talk about ugly things, Karen? I opened the folder. Let's talk about this. I pulled out the bank statements, with the fraudulent charges highlighted in bright yellow. One by one, I put them down on the table. $185 on new dishes with my card. $320 on clothes for you with my card. $180 on makeup with my card. $450 on home decor with my card. $600 on shoes and handbags with my card. I kept pulling out the papers. The piles grew on the table. Do you know what this is called, Karen? It's called fraud. Unauthorized use of a credit card. It's a criminal offense. Ryan stood up suddenly, snatching the papers from the table. His eyes scanned the numbers, the dates, the charges. Karen? His voice shook. Is this true? She didn't answer. She just stood there, with Chloe now crying loudly in her arms. Answer me, Ryan yelled. Did you steal my mom's credit card? It's not stealing. She has plenty of money. Karen defended herself. She lives all alone in this huge house on her pension. What does she need it all for? We have a baby. And that gives you the right? Ryan was red with fury. That gives you the right to steal? Your mom owed us her help. My own mother told me so. When you lend your house, you do it completely, not halfway. Your mom is selfish. Enough! Ryan's shout shook the walls. Stop it, Karen. For the first time in 8 months, I saw my son truly defend something. Defend me, but I wasn't finished yet. There's more, I said. I pulled out another document. This is the call history from my landline, the one in the kitchen. See these calls highlighted in red? They are all to the bank. 32 calls in 3 months. Karen turned white as a sheet. I got an email from the bank 2 weeks ago asking me if I had authorized a credit limit increase. I never requested that, but someone called, pretending to be me, and the bank has all of those calls recorded. I pulled out one last piece of paper, a screenshot of an email. You intercepted my email too, didn't you? The bank sent a notice of the limit increase. I never got it until I checked my email account and found that someone had marked all emails from the bank as read and moved them to the trash. Ryan looked at the papers as if he couldn't believe his eyes. Karen, tell me this isn't true, please. She started crying uncontrollably. Your mom has us living on handouts. She treats us like we owe her our lives. I just took what we deserved. You deserve nothing. My voice came out as cold as ice. I opened my house to you. I fed you. I sheltered you. I gave you my own bedroom, my space, my peace. And you repaid me by stealing from me, by humiliating me, and by throwing my history in the trash. I turned to Ryan. $3,400 in unauthorized purchases. But if we add in the utilities, the food, the use of my property, you owe me over $16,000. Mom, I didn't know. But you didn't want to see either, I said, looking him straight in the eyes. You left every morning, leaving me alone with her. You never once asked me how I was. You never noticed that I had stopped cooking with garlic, that I had stopped sewing, that I had stopped being myself in my own house. Ryan collapsed onto the sofa, his head in his hands. Karen kept crying, but now they were tears of rage, not remorse. You have 2 options, I said, holding up 2 fingers. You pay back the $3,400 in unauthorized charges, and you leave in 15 days, not 30. Or I file a criminal complaint for fraud, and we let a judge handle this. The silence that followed was deafening. The only sounds were Chloe's crying and Karen's ragged sobs and me standing in the middle of my living room, in my house, finally having found my voice. Karen dropped onto the couch, her crying changing in tone. It was no longer rage. It was panic, because she finally understood that I was serious. Mom, please. Her voice was choppy. Don't do this. Think about Chloe. She's your granddaughter. Are you really going to separate us? You separated yourself when you made the decision to steal from me. Ryan lifted his head, his eyes red and swollen. Mom, just give me time. I'll pay you back everything. But please don't file the complaint, please. Karen wouldn't go to jail right away. It would depend on the judge. But with this amount of evidence, it's highly likely she would at least get a criminal record. And that would mean no jobs in many places, no loans, no ability to travel to certain countries. Karen started to hyperventilate. No. Ryan, do something. Tell your mom to stop. Me? Do something? Ryan looked at her with an expression I had never seen on his face before. Where were you when my mom needed help? When she had that chest pain and you went to lunch with your friends, leaving her all alone? Where was your concern then? Karen's eyes widened in surprise. How do you know about that? Mrs. Rebecca told me yesterday. She saw me at the grocery store and she asked me how my mom was feeling after the scare. I had no idea what she was talking about. I had to ask her. And I was ashamed, Karen. So ashamed to know that my own mother could have had a heart attack, and I didn't even know because you never bothered to tell me. It's because I thought it was just drama. My mom never does drama. Ryan stood up. That's my mom. The woman who became a widow and kept this house going all by herself. The woman who worked for 40 years to have something of her own. And you call her dramatic. It was the first time in 8 months that Ryan had defended something with such passion. I only wished it had been sooner. I wished we hadn't had to get to this point. Karen hugged herself, rocking Chloe back and forth. My mom told me that when a mother-in-law offers her house, it's her duty to support the whole family. That I didn't have to ask for permission for anything because it was my right. And there it was. The truth behind everything. Your mom filled your head with a lot of wrong ideas, I said tiredly. And you believed them because they suited you. Karen finally broke down crying again, but this time it was different. This time, there was a glimmer of genuine remorse in her tears. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm really, really sorry. I don't know when it all got so out of control. At first, I just wanted to help with some small changes. And then my mom said it was my chance to have nice things, because you had money. And I never had much growing up. I always wanted to have nice things, a nice house. And when I saw that you didn't say anything, I just thought that you didn't care. Of course I cared. I just didn't know how to set boundaries without seeming like the bad mother-in-law, without pushing my son away, without losing my granddaughter. Ryan came closer to me. Mom, forgive me. Forgive me for not being there, for not seeing, for letting all of this happen. I looked at him. I saw the boy that I had raised, the man he had become, and also his mistakes. I forgive you, son, but that doesn't change what has to happen now. The $3,400, Ryan nodded. I'll pay you back, even if I have to work triple shifts. Even if it takes me a year, I swear I will pay you back. You don't have a year. I want you out in 15 days. Okay, 15 days. We'll find something, anything, even a small room. But Mom, his voice broke. Please don't file the complaint. Chloe needs her mom. And Karen. He looked over at his wife. Karen made some terrible mistakes, but she's not a bad person. I looked at Karen. There she was, broken and defeated, with my granddaughter in her arms, tears falling uncontrollably down her face. Was she a bad person? I didn't know. Maybe she was just a young woman who was immature, badly advised by a toxic mother. Maybe in other circumstances we could have had a very different relationship. But that didn't matter anymore. I won't file the complaint, I said finally. On 3 conditions. They both looked at me with a sliver of hope. First, the $3,400 will be paid back in installments. $200 a month until the debt is cleared. If you are late with one single payment, I will proceed legally. I accept, Ryan said immediately. Second, you will leave in 15 days, not 30. And when you go, you will give me the keys to this house. And any copies you may have made, I accept. And third, Karen will write me a letter, by hand, acknowledging everything that she did and apologizing for it. She will give it to me before she leaves, and I will keep it. If you ever try to turn this situation against me, if you ever badmouth me to the rest of the family or try to say that I was the bad one, I will pull out that letter. Karen lifted her gaze. She nodded through her sobs. I'll do it. I swear I will do it. Then we have a deal. I turned to go up to my room, but before I reached the stairs, Ryan stopped me. Mom, someday, can you forgive us for real? I looked back over my shoulder. Forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting, son. And it doesn't mean that things will go back to the way they were. But yes, someday, when you have shown me with your actions, not just your words, that you have learned your lesson. The next 15 days were the strangest of my life. Karen and Ryan moved through the house like ghosts, packing their things quietly, searching for apartments online late into the night. There was no more loud music, no more demands, no more fake smiles. Just an uncomfortable, necessary silence. I didn't talk much either. I focused on reclaiming my spaces, little by little. I brought my sewing machines up from the basement. I cleaned the room that had been my workshop, and I hung my warm, beige curtains back up in the living room. Mrs. Rebecca came over every afternoon with coffee and sweet bread. How are you feeling, friend? Weird, like I'm waking up from a long nightmare. Because you are. But it's over now. You've set things right. On the 12th day, Karen knocked on my bedroom door. She was holding an envelope in her hands. Mom, here's the letter you asked for. I took it without opening it. Thank you. She just stood there, as if she were waiting for me to say something more. Is that all? She asked in a small voice. What else do you want me to say, Karen? I don't know. I thought that maybe we could talk. That you would explain to me how to be better, how to fix this. I looked her straight in the eyes. It is not my job to teach you how to have respect. You should have learned that years ago, and there is nothing to fix between us. There are only consequences to be lived. Her eyes filled with tears again. Do you hate me? That question surprised me. I thought for a moment before I answered. I don't hate you, Karen. Hate takes up an energy that I don't have anymore. I just don't trust you. And without trust, there can be no relationship. She left my room without saying another word. Day 15 arrived both too quickly and too slowly at once. Ryan rented a van with a friend and began to load up the few things they had brought with them 8 months ago. Now they had more, much more, things that had been bought with my money, without my knowledge. They had found a small apartment in a suburb of the city. 2 bedrooms, 800 square feet, $1,800 a month in rent. Ryan would have to work 2 jobs to pay for it. Karen would have to find work too. Real life had finally caught up with them. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the van was loaded. Ryan came back inside one last time. Mom, everything's ready. We're going. Good. Here are the keys, he said, placing them on the kitchen table. All of them. We didn't make any copies. Thank you. There was a long, awkward silence. Ryan clearly wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. Mom, Take care of your family, Ryan. And don't forget the payments. The first of every month. I won't. He came closer, as if to hug me. I took a step back instinctively. Ryan stopped. The pain on his face was clear. You're still very angry. I'm not angry. I'm tired, and I need my space. He nodded sadly. I love you, Mom. I love you too. But love isn't enough without respect. He left the house. I stayed in the kitchen, looking out the window. Karen got into the van with Chloe in her arms. Before closing the door, she looked over at me. Our eyes met for a brief second. I raised my hand in a neutral wave. It was not a warm goodbye, nor was it an angry one. It was just an acknowledgement that this chapter was finally ending. She gave me a slight nod, and then she closed the door. The van started up. I watched them turn the corner and disappear from view. And then the house was silent. It was a different kind of silence than before. It was not the silence of invasion, of fear, of walking on eggshells in your own home. It was the silence of peace. I stood there for a few more minutes. Then I walked slowly through each room. The living room. No toys scattered on the floor. No baby bottles on the table. The dining room. No diapers forgotten on the chairs. My big bedroom. It was empty. The walls had marks where they had hung things. The floor had scratches from the crib. But it was mine again. I went down to the basement. There was my grandmother's furniture, my wedding photo, my mahogany bookshelf. You can come back up now, I whispered. We're home again. That night, I slept in my own master bed for the first time in months. The sheets smelled new. I had to buy a whole new set because Karen had taken the one she had been using. I lay there, looking up at the ceiling. The same ceiling Henry and I had stared at so many times before falling asleep. The same ceiling where we had planned all of our dreams. I did it, love, I said to the emptiness. I got our house back. I set boundaries. I defended myself. And for the first time in 8 months, I cried. But they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of pure, unadulterated relief. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of birds singing, not to the sound of Chloe crying, not to the sound of Karen's heavy footsteps on the stairs, not to the TV blaring from 6 o'clock in the morning. Just birds. I stayed in bed for a few more minutes, savoring that precious silence. Then I got up, put on my favorite robe, the one Karen had hidden in the back of the closet because she said it was too old, and I went down to the kitchen. I made myself a cinnamon coffee with sugar and spice, the kind I like, without worrying if the smell would bother anyone. I sat by the window and I sipped my coffee, slowly, watching the sun light up the garden, and I smiled. The first few days were a period of deep cleaning, not just physically, but emotionally as well. Mrs. Rebecca came over to help. Okay, friend, where do we start? The big room. I want it to be mine again. Between the two of us, we moved out the crib that Karen had left behind. We gave it to a pregnant neighbor down the street. We removed the changing table, the rocker, the mini fridge. We sanded the marks on the walls and we painted them a light, sky blue, a color I had always liked but had never dared to use. It looks gorgeous, Eleanor. Like a hotel room. It looks like my room. That's what matters. I hired a locksmith, Mr. Esteban, a 70-year-old man who had been changing the locks in our neighborhood for 30 years. Mrs. Thompson, is everything okay? Why are you changing all the locks?